practitioner here at CSL Parker, and I will be your host for this service today. Other practitioners on duty are Felina Harrington, who will assist on the platform, and Luann Hillisland, who facilitated our pre-service, there she is, our pre-service meditation at 9:30. Please join us. Also, any practitioner wearing a white stole is advertising that we love to pray. Please ask us. Come right over here to the sunlight. We would love to sit down with you. At Center for Spiritual Living, we all honor all paths to the divine, all paths to God, to deeper spirituality. No matter where you've been, no matter where you're going, no matter where you are, we honor you on your path right now. Some of us, when we first found people that understood us, we felt like we'd come home. So I say, welcome to your Parker home. We're glad you're here. We also provide spiritual tools for personal and community transformation. We fulfill that mission with Sunday gatherings, by offering classes and workshops, and by being of service to the greater community. So Shirley is back with our children. It's always best if we have 2 adults with our children. So Shirley is looking for teacher's assistants. You don't have to plan the lesson. You don't have to really execute it. You just do what Shirley asks. It's especially important now. Last Sunday, we had a little Buzz Lightyear. He was about this tall and still in diapers, but he had the uniform on. We also had a tween who's looking forward to coming back. So please think about one Sunday a month, you can get some love endorphins from those kids and help us begin them on their meaningful spiritual path. Oh, and thank you, everyone who has brought goodies to share after our service. I especially appreciate that. Colleen, that cheer came from Colleen, who usually feeds us in extraordinary fashion and did bring 2 hot dishes today. But you know, if we could relieve her the whole job just by picking something up at the grocery store, it would gives us more variety, gives us more fun. So, okay, I know we have lots of people here for the very first time. So I'm gonna ask this a little bit differently. How many of you that are here for the first time or here very rarely came from other CSL or New Thought churches? Would you please just raise your hand? Thank you. And how many of you came from that great big church over on the west side? Thank you so much for coming to see us. And of course, Dr. Teal. So I'm wondering if there's anyone here for the first time at CSL Parker, for the first time at a New Thought or a CSL church. Anyone brand new? Well, wonderful, we've got all veterans. You could go for the senior level speech today. All right, on that note, why don't you stand if you are willing and able? We would like to greet one another. A hug, a handshake, a smile, a little love. Just take a few minutes and greet. Now, let's take a deep breath. We're going to lead into a song and the spiritual part of our Sunday. So please join me in shifting to that part of our service.
Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery. Let go of the shore and let the water carry you. Let go of the shore, float into the mystery.
Good morning. I'm Felina Harrington, a practitioner here. I'm going to do a meditation with you, and then we're going to go into a reading, and then we're going to go into prayer, and then you're going to get to hear the speaker. Yay! Okay. So let's just close our eyes. Take some really good deep breaths. Really relax your body and go within. Go within as deep as you can. Feel the source within yourself. The mighty, beautiful energy of source. I am and you are that source within you. I am love. Oh, I feel this love. This warmth. This peacefulness. So tender. I am joy. Joy, joy, joy. Laughter. Wonderment. It is all God. Take a couple of more deep breaths and return to me, please. The reading today is from the book Living the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. This is an essay that he calls The River of Life. Someone has said, there is a river of life, clear as crystal, flowing through the body of humanity, uniting every part into one great being in Christ. Jesus spoke of the well of water, and of water many times, from which if a man drank, he should never thirst again. Throughout the Bible, we have a simile of water, typifying the flowing power of pure spirit. It appears that we have the ability, at least temporarily, to pollute this stream of life with the consciousness of hate, despair, or any negative thoughts. But for in spite of all of our misdirection, we are still being carried forward on the bosom of this infinite stream to harbor in perfect safety. We may rest in the absolute assurance that good will be the final goal of all things. We can hasten the advent of the good by definitely clarifying our thoughts and by daily meditating upon the invisible source, the wellspring of life within each one of us. So now we're going to go into prayer. The Heavenly Father is here with us, right here, right now. And I know it, I feel it. And you and I are all one in that spirit. And I am one with you, and you are one with me. I realize that the talk that we are going to have, the message that we are going to have from Dr. Roger today, that's entitled From Has Been to Shall Be, is something that we can all ignite in and feel the fire in our soul and our heart. And we'll walk away with something really real today through this message that we can take with us all week and even farther if we want to. And I realize that this is a blessed congregation that we have here today. An amazing group of people who are all on the same path to realization and to our consciousness. And please join me in saying, and so it is.
Keeping your eyes
I figured out in greeting many of you as you came in that I don't need to introduce Dr. Roger. But I am so happy, so proud, so honored to have him here at our little and bursting at the seams church that I'm going to anyway. I knew Dr. Roger back in the 80s, as many of you did, but I won't embarrass him with those stories. Many of us met him when he served 10 years as an associate minister at Mile High Church, before leaving to serve pulpits in Oregon and California. I always thought he was sent away to kind of grow up so he could come back. Not that he needed to, but just to get experience elsewhere so he could come back and be more powerful. I have no idea why he left. He returned to Mile High in 1993, where he served as spiritual minister, as senior minister, and spiritual director until he retired in 2018. And he returns today to us. How special. Dr. Roger is a life-transforming speaker, a gifted community builder, and a global spiritual leader. Dr. Roger is one of the great wisdom keepers of our age, if you ask me. His title today is called From Has Been to Shall Be. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Roger Teal.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Wow, what a joy to be here, and I see so many familiar faces. And some of you are new to me, so love and blessings to you all, and what a joy to be here. And just one little correction, I retired in 2019, but that's all right, you know, it happened. And I'll talk a little more about that actually, but it's a joy to be here. Thank you very much. Thanks for keep holding the light here in Parker, and for casting a vision for what you would be. And of course, this is Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes.
And I'm a little fearful of asking this question, but how many are rooting for the Chiefs? And then obviously, how many for the Eagles? How many forgot it was Super Bowl Sunday? Okay, gotcha. All right, well, again, thank you for having me here. By the way, for those of you who know my wife, Erica, she sends her love. We have just a month ago had our 6th grandchild born. And Mama and grandchild have been with us the last several days because Daddy was exposed to COVID. So we're isolating them with us, which is just great. And our message to him is take your time. Take your time. Make sure you are well. It's really interesting how life flows. That's kind of what we're going to explore today. But we've got an infant, and then we have a 20-year-old grandchild, the whole spectrum. Life is good. Life is good. So yes, the topic I thought I'd share with today is from has been to shall be. It's probably no secret to you, but life is always changing. It's always unfolding. It's always becoming more in this life. Always. Now this is inevitable, and it's natural, and it's best if we find a way to flow with that instead of fighting it. But you know, we tend to look back and compare how things were. Found this little ditty in my files that compares then and now, then being back in the 50s and 60s and current now. Then it was long hair. And for many of us, now it's longing for hair. Back then it was about the keg. Now it's sometimes about the EKG. For some, back then it was acid rock. Now it's more typically acid reflux. Back then it was the Rolling Stones. Sometimes it's the kidney stones. Back then it was whatever. Now it's depends. The key thing here is that whenever we hold too tightly to yesterday, too tightly to what was, we create struggle and pain for ourselves, and we block the possibilities that are beckoning to us. So I want to ask you right from the outset, what is your relationship with yesterday? Your yesterdays. Is it evolving? Or is it decaying? Is it stagnant? Is it productive? Or is it constricting? I mean, to look back, for insights, wisdom, to celebrate the good stuff that has been a part of our journey, that's all good stuff. That's all great, as long as we don't spend too much time in that space. Too much time, because our power is in being inspired by and committed to the now. The now. So I want to share two particular traps that having an inclination to hang out in the past creates in our life. Two traps. The first one I would call pine-overs, where we pine over the past that is over. Now we all know people who, no matter what you're asking or what you're talking about, they revert back into their past. They dive back into the past, and usually with the sense that it was a better time than now. My past was beautiful, it's wonderful, and it doesn't take long for you to hear, oh, for the good old days. You've had that experience with some, yeah. But here's the deal. I've discovered that the good old days weren't that good. They really weren't that good. They had their difficulties and they had their challenges, along with their opportunities and their blessings. And sure as shooting, people who long for the good old days, when they were actually in those good old days, were longing for former days. So those good old days, I don't know about that. We pine over things. And we send our heart and our energy back into a past that is past. It's done. It's over. So the tendency is to romanticize the past and condemn the present. Now, I especially saw this happening a couple of years ago in our 2020 adventure with the pandemic. And of course, that was a difficult time. It challenged us to the core. We had to shift how we did our relationships. You all had to shift how you did church, and so did Mile High. The tendency then was to condemn those times. And of course, they were difficult, truth be told, very difficult, maybe unprecedented. And yet there were opportunities in them as well. And many things have evolved. I know I can speak for my colleagues at Mile High as I regularly talk with them, and Mile High now has an enormous online ministry, far greater than it was when it was streaming before COVID. And I bet you do too. And many of us have developed other skills. I do a lot of webinars right now. Now, before 2020, I wouldn't have known what in the world it was, or how to dial up my Zoom, and I still have trouble with that sometimes. But I know these things now that I didn't, and I'm able to reach people that I otherwise might not have. Just the whole point being that it's easy to default into complaint with what is, and then just revert back to, oh, I wish it were the good old days. The good old days. Really, what, if one were honest, who hangs out in that kind of thinking, it's one would really say, in all honesty, I'm afraid of the future. I'm afraid of the future, so it seems easier to stay immersed in a glamorized past, an idealized past, rather than stretching forward into the unknown for me, into what we sometimes call our greater yet to be. So to pine over what was, rather than to create what shall be. The first great trap in a dysfunctional relationship with our yesterdays. The second one, after pine-overs, is do-overs. Do-overs. And that's wishing we could go back and do it differently in our life. Now, I tell you what, the only instance where do-overs are a good thing is in golf. If it weren't for mulligans, I don't know what would be for my game. But there are no mulligans in the rest of our life. There are no mulligans. Regrets are like chains, balls and chains from our past. And I know many who are so caught up in that, caught up in the regrets that they cripple their path forward. The great preacher Fulton Ausler, he said, "We crucify ourselves between two thieves, regret for yesterday and fear for tomorrow." So if you do find yourself wishing things had been different and you had done it differently, if you've been hanging out in the do-overs, here's the deal. This is just a way to beat yourself up. And that's not going to get you anywhere. And it's not going to change the past. But that's usually what's going on. And it's also just another way of avoiding leaping into a future we can only know when we go there. And that's why a whole lot of folks hang out in has-been land, because the truth we all know when we get honest is that we really only see about a foot or so metaphorically ahead of ourselves. And the only way our lives have ever grown is that we took a step, even before we knew the rest of the steps on the journey. But we were courageous enough to go ahead and take that step, and we did. And then the next steps appeared, and the next steps. And some of them we would say worked out great, and some didn't. But if we charted the whole journey, we would see that it worked out magnificently. Even though it veered around, we got to where our inner light was seeking to shine. So there comes a time when we gotta let go of regret. And we gotta let go of the past. And sure, there are things we would do differently, but we were probably doing the best we knew how to do within the scope of our consciousness then. And hopefully, the past has served us by cultivating our consciousness now and preparing us to continue to listen to the inner impulse and to move forward in our life. Maybe today you came here because it's time for you to forgive the past. Time to quit beating yourself up and wishing you could do it over. It's past. And really, the only thing you and I ever have is now, this holy instant. Past is memory, future is a possibility, but life is happening only and constantly in the now. My prayers is that you'll release yourself from pine-overs, wishing for the, quote, better times, a romanticized, idealized past, and from do-overs. And I want to offer you some power for your life now and tomorrow. And these are give-overs, make-overs, and take-overs. Let's talk about give-overs. There comes a time when, having listened deeply to our hearts, we give ourselves over to the guiding impulse of our souls. And we move forward in this life. We give ourselves to newness. For every one of us is a shall be person. Now, an acorn shall be an oak. Given the right conditions, it's not going to become wheat. It's going to become an oak. A bulb shall be a tulip or an iris or a crocus. And you shall be what the God seed, the unique God seed in you, is designed and destined to be. You are a shall be person, hopefully creating the environment in the now to go forward. And so there comes a time when we give ourselves over to that which wants to unfold within us. On my desk in my study, I've got this piece of red rock, and laser etched into it is the phrase, take a deep breath of possibility. Do that right now. Take a deep breath of your possibility. You are a shall-be person, a magnificent light in the now that seeks to shine and evolve and express and give of itself. To some extent, you know what that looks like. In the greater extent, you feel it. You know it. The little voice, the still small voice, as the Bible calls it, whispers. And you know, I'm being called to my next step. I'm being called to whatever. And blessed are we when we go. There's a phrase in the Bible called grieving the Spirit. And when we hang out in the past, other than for the wisdom it gives us and treasured memories, when we hang out there rather than flowing in life's river, we're grieving the Spirit. We're grieving that part of us that is meant to grow. If something's alive, it's going to grow. I feel an aliveness here in this church, and what I want to tell you is that means it's going to grow. And by the way, I would encourage you to stop calling this your little church. Words have power. This is a vibrant church. And if you keep it alive, it's got to grow. That's what happens. So for me, in 2017, I was getting disturbing messages in my meditations. Nearly every day, something deep within, when my figured out mind was very still and my heart was open, was telling me, you're reaching the end of a chapter. That needs to change. And that troubled me deeply because I knew what I was talking about. I was talking about my, up to that point, 43 years in the traditional ministry, in the pulpit ministry, as it's called, church leadership. And that troubled me so deeply because Mount High was going strong. Back in '98, we built the community center. In 2008, we opened our new sanctuary. We were thriving. And yet this voice was saying, and you're done with that portion. You need to step out of that role you have held in different forms for 43 years, since you were 24. And you need to explore ministry in a different way. Now, as a minister, an ordained minister, you never retire from ministry. That's why I told people when I finally announced it that I was entering into rewirement, not retirement. Because you don't really retire from the ministry. But it needed to change its forms that something in me might grow and evolve in a needed way. I could still be there. I could still be there another 10 years, but something said no now. And now, when I saw COVID come along, I said, oh, thank God, I listened to that. Yeah. But it wasn't about that. It was about, for the rest of your days on this planet, it's time to step out of how you've identified yourself and explore. Explore. And it was the most difficult thing I've ever done, because nobody loves this teaching more than me. And nobody loves Mile High Church more than me, because I got into it when I was 14 years old, and it transformed my life back then, and blessed me all the way through. I met my wife, my beloved wife, on the patio right outside what's now called the Vote Center as an associate minister. And yet it was time to let it go. And so I spent a couple of years finding the most talented ministers I could find to become the lead ministers, Dr. Michelle and Reverend Josh. And then I started very gradually letting people know until I announced it to the congregation. Then I took the big leap, and I was exhausted after that transition program. I didn't show up or speak at Mile High for 6 months. And then I came back, and I began to see why it was important for me. And you know, it's still unfolding. For a while, I was just in the transition phase where I just had to be, not trying to make something new, just be in this healing, grieving, empty space. So often, we come to the end of a chapter and we want to rush into the new one. We leap to solution, rather than giving ourselves this healing time in between to integrate what was, to discover things you can't discover while you're in that former chapter. And you've got to be in the new space, the empty space. It's like in the Bible, so many of the prophets wandered for days and many years, sometimes 40 years, in the desert. We have to have our desert time before something new shows up. But then after about a year of that, it began new thoughts about how I could still share and still be a minister. So I created Roger Teal Ministries and rogerteal.com, and I do webinars and personal consulting with individuals, mentoring with individuals. Do a great 3-month program for those who are time, no kidding, to get serious about their dreams. It's called Master Dream Building. It's for those who are ready to take on the sabotaging elements within themselves and get going on their dream. I got one coming up starting next Saturday. And so this is thrilling me and delighting me. And what I know, I sense that there's more there too. But here's what I know. What's going on for me now and what shall be revealed couldn't have happened until I gave myself over to that voice, to that path. So you got to move when you don't know. And you got to move before you feel ready. One of the big ways we sabotage ourselves is, well, I don't know, I'm not ready. I need to prepare more, or I need to know more about what's coming down the pike. Give it up, you're just finding a way to sabotage yourself. I know it, I've been there. Richard Branson, he's a billionaire, and just followed his guidance from creation to creation, creating Virgin Records, Virgin Airlines, and all these things. With phenomenal success. One of his bottom line messages to people is, I pray you will begin before you feel ready. So you give yourself over to the impulse of the Spirit, which is in every one. If you're breathing, it's there. Okay? It's there, no matter what your age, your station, your past. Something says, keep going. What's next? How can you shine your unique light in this world in your own way? I pray that you'll embrace give-overs. And then along the way, some makeovers too. Spiritual makeovers are important. We take the past and we take its lessons and its realizations, and rather than indicting ourselves as imperfect because we should have gone this way when we could have gone that way, we say, you know what? This has been a journey of being aligned with the Spirit, the I am. This has been a journey of seeking to recognize my essence and to live through the leadership of my heart rather than the leadership of my head. See, we human beings have gotten it all screwed up. Most of us lead our lives from the figured out mind, this computer. And it's a wonderful tool, but it was never meant to be given the reins of our life. The leadership of our life has been meant to be the heart. We're using the brain, the mind, as a tool. And so there comes a time when we decide that our journey has been perfect. We no longer hang out in the do-over thinking. We say, you know what, for all of its ups and downs, ins and outs, it's gotten me here. And it's my unique journey, and by God, it's perfect. And we allow a kind of a makeover. We shift out of indicting ourselves, blaming ourselves, wishing things had been different or we had been different. And we just say, I have the rich treasure trove of all the insights I've amassed over these many years and through all of my decisions and the twists and turns of my life, and it's all good. I pray that right now you can make that decision that I shall view my past and where I am now as all good. Because it's all God. And it's your launch pad into your greater yet to be. This is this makeover. I remember working quite a while ago with a lady who was so longing for her husband to retire. And finally it came to that time, and he did. 2 months later, he collapsed and died. And she was not only aggrieved, as you can imagine, she was, pissed. I tell you what, she was livid. How dare he leave me when we're getting ready to travel and enjoy our family more. And he worked so hard, and I was looking forward to more time. How dare he? And so she came in for some spiritual support, and we talked a long time, and I just let her get that out. We don't push anything down. We let those emotions out so they don't get toxic within us. But then she started talking more honestly and openly in an exploring way about herself. And she came to the realization that she had relied on her husband for everything. I mean, she, at that point, didn't even know how to balance their checkbook because her husband did that. And she started getting, it was a part of thinking about her loss, but in so doing, she began to realize how she had, in their relationship, stymied herself, suppressed her own beingness. And while it was sad and tragic that her husband so quickly left, it was time for her to find her voice, and time for her to follow her heart, and time for her to activate her true power. She said, I think it's time for me to be a woman of power. And I said, well, God bless you for that. And she went on, as I observed her over the next 5 years or so, to let her life blossom. She started doing things she'd never done, or never would have thought to do alone without her husband. She traveled a lot on her own. She joined a lot of groups. She volunteered heavily at Mile High. She even met somebody after a while. And I love that she had this makeover experience, even in the throes of grieving. It's like she said, it's time for me to have a different, healthy relationship with myself that helps me build a greater tomorrow. And I pray that if you're in that, anything near that, that you'll allow this inner makeover within yourself. In the book of Romans, it says, creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God. I've always loved that phrase. Creation waits with eager longing. It's like all of life is longing for us to get out of our way and really respond to the nudges and the guidance of our hearts. To, yes, bless what is in our life, but never let that become a prison to what can be in our life. Makeovers. And finally, along with give-overs and makeovers, I would invite you to takeovers. Where something in you just takes over and you actually go for it. The incredible tenor, maybe the greatest operatic tenor ever, Enrique Caruso. He didn't always have it easy. In fact, Italians, I'm told, can be very passionate about their operas. And one time he didn't have so good an evening singing, and they actually ran him out of town. But you know what? He kept going. He kept going. And as his career advanced, there was a certain opportunity where he was going to be singing in the largest auditorium in all of Italy, and many dignitaries there. It was a stellar event, a breakthrough event. And he was pacing backstage before, and the stagehands heard him saying something that I really love. He was muttering over and over, little me move over, big me take over. Little me move over, big me take over. We all are familiar with the little me. The little me is the extent to which we have become fear-based beings, that we navigate our life by fear. Fear becomes the controlling element. I can't do that, I'm afraid to do that. I won't take that step because I don't know what will happen next. Sometimes we become paranoid with outcomes, and we think that the outcomes are important. I'm here today to tell you that outcomes don't matter. Now, I know we haven't been raised that way. Most of us were raised that we become valid beings when we create certain desired and respected outcomes. You know, how many of us were told, get out there and make something of yourself? The implied message is, there's nothing much now, but if you do the right things, amass the right things, accomplish the right things, get enough money, homes, status symbols, reputation, you'll be somebody. And so we become paranoid in taking productive and important risks in our life because we don't know the outcome. And my counsel is the outcome doesn't matter. You're a winner no matter what the outcome. If you decide that you're going to continue to love yourself and take pride that you got off your couch and got going in life, and if you learn. There's no such thing as failures. It's all feedback. And so there comes a time when we allow this something within us to take over and reveal our greatness, and we allow ourselves to fall flat in our face a few times and to get up and even see that as a valuable part of the journey. I've seen times where things that fell flat in my life actually were critical to leading me to insights that opened up greater good in my life. So that do-over stuff, again, to go back and want to do over with something that was difficult and painful, actually it became a part of the greater journey. And so we're called to let that something within us take over. Silence the inner critic and the inner cynic. Understand that our fears are always going to be with us, but they don't have to be in the driver's seat anymore. We put them in the back seat and tell them to pipe down because we're going to go for it. There's a motto in my dream building work that when it all comes down to it, do it afraid. Because any significant step forward in your life, there's going to be fear. Stop wishing that there weren't. It'll be there. I tell you what, fear's going to be a traveling buddy in all of our lives forever. It's not any longer a stop sign. It's green light. And we go to our hearts and we find our passion. And we find our purpose, and we find our courage, and we do it afraid. And all of a sudden there's the exhilaration of a greater expanse of life for us. We've allowed it to take over our hearts, and our guidance to take over. A young man was standing on the shores of Lake Michigan. He was 32 years old. And he had one idea, to throw himself into the lake and commit suicide. You see, 5 years earlier, his oldest child had died at the age of 4. And now he felt humiliated because of business failures that had left him penniless, and a lot of his family and friends had invested in it, and they had lost money too. And to top it off, a new baby was on the way, and there was no money to feed the child, much less himself and his wife. And so his thinking in that moment was maybe if he ended it all, his family would take care of his wife and his child to be. So he stood there at the edge of that lake for a very long time, watching the waves and the rocks and the pebbles and such. And something began to shift in him. You know, that tends to happen when we get still and silence things. Like Jesus silenced the winds and the waves. Something higher in us silences that. His mind began to get calm, and he had a deep spiritual realization, an awakening. And an inner voice proclaimed as clear as can be to him, you do not belong to yourself. You belong to the universe. And then other realizations began to flow with that profound epiphany. And he began in that moment to see how all of the difficulties, the pain of his recent past actually had lessons, had insights, had good for him, could strengthen him, and it could all work through him. And so he made 2 covenants at that time. The first one being that he would always endeavor to think for himself. And secondly, he'd spend the rest of his life solving problems that trouble the whole of humanity. So in that instance, that young man's life was entirely transformed from within out. His consciousness was blown open to a great new dimension, and the creativity began to gush forth. That young man would live 56 more years, and he's now remembered as a remarkable visionary, one of the most remarkable and visionary men of the 20th century. In fact, Einstein once said to him, "Young man, you amaze me." He was an inventor, architect, engineer, mathematician, poet, cosmologist. He received 25 U.S. patents. He wrote 28 books. He's the one who envisioned the geodesic dome and other breakthroughs. He was awarded doctorates, honorary doctorates at 47 universities and scores of other awards. I speak of Buckminster Fuller, more lovingly called Bucky Fuller. When I was associate minister, I created a symposium in Denver called Dimensions of Mind. Any of you ever remember our Dimensions of Mind symposium? We usually got a couple thousand folks at the largest venues we could rent in Denver. And at that first time, I assembled a group of 6 participants. And to my deep joy, Bucky Fuller said yes to being there. So we presented Bucky, and my mom and I had a great dinner with him afterward. And then there was another incident, and it comes full circle. I met Erica in 1987, fell deeply in love with her, fell in love with her 2 boys, who were then 5 and 8, who I would adopt and are my sons now. And we got married in 1988. Now, when we had set the marriage, we were going to get married at Mile High, as we did. Fred married us, and then we were going to go to Aspen for our honeymoon. Well, in 1988, we also hosted singer John Denver at Mile High. And he was trying to promote his Windstar Symposium at that time. And so he spoke very beautifully, he sang it. John and I made a connection. So much so that on Tuesday of the next week, he gave me a call at the church office and says, Roger, I'm marrying my second wife, Cassandra Delaney. And we arranged for a minister up here, but I don't resonate with him. But I loved hearing you pray, and I really enjoyed meeting you. Would you come do our wedding? And I said, well, when and where is it? He said, oh, it's going to be in a meadow in Starwood below my home. And it's going to be on August, I think it was 12th, maybe it was 13th. Well, we were getting married on August 5th. And I said, well, John, serendipitously, Erica and I are going to be in Aspen for our honeymoon. We said, well, stay longer and do my wedding. And I said, done. So we did. And had a great time with him, went to his rehearsal dinner. And I remember one time, after the dinner was over, we went down to a bar in Snowmass that he was part owner of. And there was a bartender who was a great bartender doing magic tricks. And so most of the wedding, large wedding party was at the bar watching this guy do these magic tricks. And John was sitting on the ledge of a half wall, about 10 feet away, just observing the joy of this whole event. And I remember going up to him and I said, still just a great honor to be here and do this for you, my friend. And he said, thank you. And I said, I've always wanted to ask you what it was like when you made this great turn in your career, because you stopped singing a certain kind of song and you began to sing songs about the environment and about children and about peace. You began to sing about Jacques Cousteau and Bucky Fuller and things like that. And I have to imagine that that impacted your career and your sales. He said, oh yeah. He said, I was RCA's largest record sales ever, and he still holds that record in many categories. But they when the sales went to a different level, they just kicked me to the side. So I formed my own label. And he said, but there are times you've got to follow your heart. I had to veer off country roads to a higher path. I've never forgotten that. So I tell you about that because also in 1980, skip back to 1980, there was a huge event in New York held for the birthday of Bucky Fuller, his 85th birthday. And many dignitaries got up and spoke to this huge gathering at this gala event. And then John Denver was asked to do a toast. He said, I'm going to do my toast via a song. I've written a song for Bucky, and it's going to be on an upcoming album. And the song he then sang for Bucky, who was sitting right in the front row, was What One Man Can Do. Maybe you've heard of that song, but here's the chorus, the lyrics of the chorus. What one man can do is dream. He's singing this about Bucky. And what one man can do is love. What one man can do is change the world and make it new again. Here you see what one man can do. And then he had the whole crowd, most of whom were in tears, sing that along with him. And then when he was done, he went over and he kissed Bucky on the forehead. And he patted him on the back and said, "I love you, Bucky. I love you." And I share that with you because I've always loved that song, and I personally changed the lyrics just slightly. Rather than what one man can do, I like to sing it as what we all can do. What we all can do is dream. What we all can do is love. What we all can do is change the world and make it new again. Here you see what we all can do. But you gotta let something take over. Beyond your resistance, beyond your fear, and return to the great adventure of your greater yet to be. So this day, it's all about an inventory of how much do I pine over the past, how much do I hang out in do-overs, and can I shift all of that into give-overs, giving myself over to that greater yet to be, giving myself over to this voice, and makeovers, shifting how I envision and feel about myself, such that then I can have a great takeover, that the Spirit, my heart, can lead me into that which I'm designed and destined to be. Let's go from has been to shall be. Let us be today people building tomorrow's world. Let's have a prayer together. Just breathe deeply. Let your heart warm even more. And I'm remembering that line in Philippians 3. This one thing I do, forgetting those things that are behind, and reaching forth to those things that are before, I press toward the mark for the high calling of God. Oh, sense that energy within you that knows the miracle of life itself, that seeks to have this life and have it more fully, more abundantly, more creatively than ever before, that feels the energy of being. And we take off the chains that have bound us. Our hearts make them ropes of sand. And imagine or visualize yourself stepping into a greater yet to be. You may not even know how it's all going to unfold, but you give over to it. You let it take over. For you've had this inner makeover. I am spirit, divine. I have walked through something called a past, but I am not a being of the past. I am a now being, creating in cooperation with the universe a new tomorrow. All the love, all the creative energy, all the guidance, all the strength, creativity and joy of life abide within me. I open up the windows and allow this spiritual fresh air to quicken me and open me. And I affirm that I am an unfolding expression of a higher idea. I stand ready to be surprised by all that that seed of God contains, that which is my soul. And I move forward with joy, with anticipation, with courage, into that which is beckoning me, knowing that it is not so much about what is accomplished, it's about that which I am becoming. I'm more fully expressed. Creation waits for the revealing of the true self within me. I say yes and I go forward in joy. giving thanks for the miracle of this life and my eternal relationship of oneness with the divine. And we speak a word today, knowing that that presence divine is a light and a love where everyone is. Maybe there's somebody that you're concerned about that you know of. It's affirm a no. And bless them in this consciousness that the love and the light of God is right in them, through them, and for them right now. And may we do the same for our brothers and sisters in Turkey and Syria. The tragedy that has unfolded there. May we bless these souls who have moved into their greater journey of life. May we bless their families in these countries as they are lifted up. And may we speak the word for peace on earth, activating a consciousness that God is the peace that passeth all understanding, can never be subdued or obstructed or buried. And that even through travail, the light and the peace still shines. And we give thanks for this truth in us and in all. For this and more than words can say, may we be grateful, may we let it be and become, and so it is. Amen. Thanks again, dear ones. It's been a great, great joy to hang out with you today.
Take a little love and pass it on. Take a little love and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little love and pass it on, joy. Take a little joy and pass it on. Take a little joy and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little joy and pass it on, peace. Take a little peace and pass it on. Take a little peace and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little peace and pass it on, smile at everybody. Take a little smile and pass it on. Take a little smile and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little smile and pass it on, you get to hug folks. Take a little hug and pass it on, go and hug. And take a little hug and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little hug and pass it on, we're gonna do that again. Move around. Take a little and pass it on. Take a little hug and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little hug and pass it on, love again. Take a little love and pass it on. Take a little love and pass it on. And if I know the world is hard to show, if you take a little love and pass it on.
Now is our time to take that love, that appreciation, that joy, and share it at our time of offering. So I invite our usher, and if we could have two assistants, one to do the center aisle, one for each other aisle. I'm totally confused. Take a breath. Catherine, would you come forward? Oh, do we have an assistant usher? All right. Can I have one for this side or?
Yeah, Kathleen's here.
All right, okay.
Yeah, she's here.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So come on forward. Ushers, come forward. I want to bless you especially because I'm so glad you're here. Okay, let's get to it. Take your gift in your hand. Apply it to your heart. If you give electronically, do the same. And repeat after me. I give this gift for you.
I give this gift for you.
I give this gift for me.
I give this gift for me.
Knowing that as I give, so shall I receive.
Knowing that as I give, so shall I receive.
And And so it
To end the positive, eliminate the negative. Latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with mystery. Got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring you down to minimum. Have faith of pandemonium, reliable, the rock on the scene. Tell to illustrate has last remark, shoulder in the wind. Know what they are. What did they do just when everything looked so dark? I was sad with that. I accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. Has last remark, shoulder in the wind. Know what they are. What did they do just when everything looked so dark? Do you know what's thinking? And they said they felt absent. She waited for positive, eliminate the negative. Latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. Oh, don't mess with Mr. In Between. Stretch it out. Oh, don't mess with Mr. In Between.
I bless these offerings and tithes. I know that from whence they came, they return many times over. I know that the love, the gratitude, the appreciation that is here multiplies, and that these offerings and tithes go forth to do the good work that it is theirs to do. And so it is. Along the lines of blessing and gratitude and appreciation, this service wouldn't have happened if it weren't for a whole lot of people stepping up. I want to thank Vicki Ward for hosting and coordinating our hospitality team, and all of you out there that brought something to share. Even more, I want to thank those of you that are going to go eat something too. Luann Hillisland, thank you for the pre-service meditation. Kathleen Daly, thank you for wrangling our ushers, especially our ad hoc ushers. I so appreciate you. Shirley Leon for leading our church, our children's church. And all the invisible angels, all the people I've forgotten to name. I want to thank you. A special thank you to our wonderful CSL Parker band. Reka, Alan, and DJ. And more than ever, thank you, Dr. Roger. I know that I'm going to watch this message so many times on Zoom that the internet might blow up. Dr. Roger, may I ask you to do a benediction for us today?
Sure. Y'all stand for that?
Yeah.
All right, we go forth now, impelled by a power within us that will not let us go, that yearns for our light to shine. We say yes and we give thanks this moment and every moment, now and always, and so it is.
And so it is.